We can add resources, but nothing's 100% safe. And perhaps it's controversial, but I'm going to say here that the reason this keeps happening is because as a society, we've decided it's okay. And the reason it's okay is that we allow angry people to have high-powered weapons and to take it out on kids, to take it out on synagogues, to take it out on churches, to take it out wherever we want. So yes, there is sort of a profile. It tends to be a young white male who has had a history of being an outsider, feeling alone, not sometimes an abusive home environment, tends to be in an area, I think Mark mentioned this, tends to be in an area where guns are very permissible. I've never understood why you can buy a gun and not know how to use it. You should, I think, training just like driving a car, but that's been decided it's not necessary. We as a society have decided that people who fit this profile can have a high-powered weapon and can tote it around and use it. And until as a society we change that, it's going to keep happening because we're getting numb. We are getting numb and it keeps happening. And when kids are killed, we just don't do anything about it. So yes, I think the majority is that everybody, not, but I think the majority is the profile that I've laid out.
Okay. Now, some food for thought based on what you just said, Dan. What about the kid who is getting bullied in school, getting picked on, and he happens to find his father's um, pistol in the house? It's not an AK, it's a 9mm, let's say, and he decides he's going to put it in his bag. And the next time somebody, messes around with him in school, he's going to show it to him at least, not even planning to maybe shoot them. But I'm going to get them off my ass once and for all. And he pulls the gun out, the gun goes off. That's not a mass shooting, but it is a shooting that occurred in school.
Sure. And as I said, we don't have the resources to find those kids. As I said, my wife in a school had over 600 kids. When you do an active shooter drill, those kids are traumatized. She has a line out the door.
Yeah, but you know what?
She does a bullying, every year she does seminars on bullying and teaches. But will you catch everybody 100%? No.
No, you won't catch everybody, but I guarantee you, when a kid is getting bullied, somebody knows about that shit.
Oh, of course, and I agree with you.
Back in the day, if somebody, wanted to be the bully, you handled it after school with your left and your right. And
but now you can reach for a gun, and that's the difference.
Yes.
When I was a kid, you've had fist fights.
So
now they solve it with a weapon.
So Robin, what is the what can the teachers do? What can the schools do, especially when the schools are overcrowded and there may be a situation going on where a child is being bullied, but they can't coddle the kid or make the kid safe for the entire 7 hours that they're there?
Yeah. That's a really tough question. I've watched teachers, my husband and others really struggle with how do I be an advocate for so many children when I have so many children. A lot of these classrooms, especially in neighborhoods where they don't have as many resources, they're just overcrowded. And a lot of the signs that we speak of and the things that people that time that could very well end in a tragic situation. A lot of those signs aren't necessarily ignored, but they have nowhere to be funneled. You don't have counselors in enough of these schools. You don't have mental health advocates inside of the schools. You don't have programming to put these children in, so they don't have this free time to be in these bully herds that they go into. And so a lot of the times the teachers are necessarily not wanting to report, but don't know who to report to or what or how to handle a situation. And it goes into, this terrible cycle and circle until, it ends in not always any violence. We're talking about gun violence, but the amount of children I see get jumped at school are children who are identify as LGBT, anything of that nature, how they get picked on at school and bullied, and then they inadvertently become bullies themselves. It is kind of disgusting. And the saddest part is there's no resource. You go down and there's 2 counselors for 400 kids. What do you do? What do you tell this counselor? You go into the program and there's only a drama program that could take 30 kids, so they don't have outlets. It becomes frustrating. So the best thing the teachers can do is demand resources. I know Chicago Public Schools and a lot of these teachers got a lot of flack for some of these strikes that they did more recently, but I stood by the teachers, as annoying as it was to have my kids every day sometimes, but I stood by those teachers because the things that they're asking for should be common sense. Counselors, nurses. I had a nephew that passed of an asthma attack at school. He had asthma attack at school. There's no school nurse on duty. Like, the children shouldn't die in school because of lack of resources. And these shootings are a direct effect of active resources. I love what, one of the panelists talked about, his wife and them having the 2 people at the door and everybody coming in and then them being able to close that door. There are schools that don't have 2 people. They can't put 2 people at the door if they wanted to. And that is the most disgusting part of it. So yeah, teachers have to advocate for themselves, and they're going to have to fight and demand resources to be able to protect these children.
All right, thank you for that. Next
Calvin,
question.
I'm sorry. Can I piggyback on something Robin said?
Sure, go ahead.
Robin, I applaud you, because that is the resources, the financial resources are so important. And we have, quote unquote, we have convinced people during the elections to vote for casinos and lotteries because those funds are supposed to go to the schools. How do you have 400 students and 1 counselor? How do you have 400 students and no resources for them, any outreach program, so that if they're having a problem, they have more than 1 person that they can communicate with? Having 1 person to talk about when you're being bullied, when you feel insecure or whatever, it's not going to work. The resources, where is the money? No teacher should have to beg you for money. You say you're concerned as a representative of a community, a state, that you're concerned about kids' safety and welfare. Where's the money? Put it to use. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next question I'm going to throw out for just your opinion, and anybody can answer this one. How do you feel about having, first question, how do you feel about having guards inside the school? I didn't say armed or unarmed. Well, let's say unarmed. How do you feel about having guards inside of schools? Anybody can answer that.
Kelvin, I'll say that since the Sandy Hook shooting in the Kansas City, Kansas School District 500, they implemented everything that Charlie talked about with the 2 doors getting buzzed in. And then all security officers in every school had to become police officers in KCK schools. So all security officers had to go through the police training program, and then they became deputized. They wore the badge now, and they wear a gun around their belt. And that's all part of this whole measure to protect schools. But I I'm okay with that as long as the security officer is working within the objectives of the school. But we've all seen through social media videos of some of these security officers treating like third graders or fourth graders like hardened criminals,
Right.
and
Right.
taking them down and tackling them and
Exactly.
hog tying them. And I mean, we've seen some really horrible things. And that's where I think I have a real huge problem with it. But from what I've seen in our school system here in Kansas City, Kansas, generally the security officers work really, really closely with the teachers and the principals to maintain a certain protocol and a community effort to treat all the students with respect and to not pass over that line.
So they are assigned to a school, and that's the school that they stay at for the whole year.
For the whole day, for the whole year. And they drive a police car and they wear a gun around them, and they answer to the school district and the police department. They went through the whole training program. I watched security officers who, some of them were able to make that transition and some of them chose not to do that. But it was one way that the school district was able to accomplish some of the objectives that went into how to make your school safer after all of these gun shootings. And we don't see that our school district doesn't see that kind of thing. And I was wondering to know, are school shootings more prevalent outside of inner city schools? That was one of my questions that I've been having about this whole topic. And I also wanted to throw out there the idea of suicide, because we were talking about LGBTQIA kids getting bullied, and LGBTQIA kids have a higher degree of suicide also. And our whole country, we're like 4% of the world's population, but we're 44% of global suicides by firearms. And that's not talked about. We talk about school shootings all the time, but we don't talk about how easy it is to get a gun to kill yourself too, you know? And that's part of it also, I think. That should be brought into this this topic too, I think.
Well, I will say this, and this is just my humble opinion, but if you're going to have a armed guard in a school, not a police person, but a guard in a school, I want him to have only one bullet, just like Barney Fife. I want him to have just one bullet, because we've seen the abuse that some of these guards put on the kids. You know, there's no reason a third grader needs to be slammed and handcuffed and, you know, pushed into the floor and crap like that. You know, they're basically harmless to you. Okay. But when you talk about the bigger kids, the high school kids, okay, that might be a little different scenario, but having guns in the school, if the guard is trying to break up a fight, okay, and you know, kids are starting to get involved in it and everybody's pushing and pulling this, that, and the other, there's a possibility of somebody getting that gun. And then another bad situation could happen. I think I have an issue with the guns being in the school. Anybody have any thoughts about that?
I'll say one of my biggest culture shocks moving to Chicago was the security guards in the school. I'm from a really small town in Michigan, Ypsilanti. And when I moved to Chicago, I moved to the west side of Chicago and I started high school. I was 13 years old when I moved here. And I was shocked that we were going through metal detectors and there was like armed security in the school. And I could not understand it. It was such a big culture shock for me. And I still haven't quite wrapped my mind around it. I do understand why we have armed officers, well, not necessarily armed, trained, I would say. I don't understand armed. I do understand why we have trained officers and people in schools because, you know, even especially now, children, high schoolers, some of them, most of them are bigger than me. These are, these are big kids. And if a fight does break out, it could be quite a difficulty to get your, the social science teacher to try to break that up. So I do understand why that happens, but it also creates a